Hi guys, the name is Mark, and I just want to do a quick little video here on you. And I'm going to, I don't know what we'll call this, unveiling the fraud. We'll call it whatever you want. Arose by any other name, I guess. Um, so let's talk about rights, okay? Um, People are in a spell, and they're not even aware that they're in a spell, and then they go to school to learn how to spell, right? And you were told not to answer and curse and stuff and swear. And we all swear up and down and we curse, and they call it cursive writing. And everybody's in a spell, but it's you look up spell in the dictionary and it says that it's a curse. Yet these people go, well, we're not in a spell, and we're not learning how to curse. And the only difference between spell and spelling is that you have in spell, it's just spell, and spelling, you have ing, and if you take the G out, you have spell in. So obviously you're in a spell. There is a message, mess and age of the mess. Sometimes words are comprised of one word or a couple of words put together, right? And they'll call this a spell or spelling, and everything's in context, right? Weren't you told not to deal with cons yet? Everybody wants to deal with cons, and then they want to have converse adions, conversations, and everything is a spell. And when you wake up and you realize that, come out of Babylon, my people, unless ye want to partake in her sins, right? And if you take the G out of sign, and you have sin. So this is how they use spells, and sometimes words are comprised of other words, like if you take pill and you take pillage, age of the pill, pillage, right? Just like, say, I don't know, vaccination, you have vaccine, nation, I magi, nation, I magi, and nation. You have three words. And these people will come at you, and they'll come on TV, and they're called characters, actors, right? And they're demonstrators. And if you look at demonstrators, you have two words, demons and traders, or demon and straters, right? So again, you have demonstrators, and we live in a message, and everything is completely taken out of context. It's completely taken out of text, and they will call it a message. Again, two words, mess and age of the mess. So you can see where I'm going with this, and everybody goes to school and they learn how to write with a pen, right? And then where will they put you? Obviously, if you don't know your sentence structure, they'll give you a life sentence or a death sentence, and they will put you in a pen, which is short for penitentiary. Okay, people? I can't make this up. Please come out of the spell. But anyhow, regardless, do what you want. It's your life. This is your gift of free will. Now, everybody goes to school and they learn how to write WRITE with a pen, right? That's why stores are open for business, okay? You're back to a pen. What would they put pigs in? In a pig pen, okay? Does this sound like good stuff to you? So they all go to school and they learn how to write, and they learn how to sign things. And if you take G out of sign, you have sin, and then you have signature. Sin at your, if you don't pronounce the G, you reverse the supposition, you're at sin. Okay, people? I can't make this stuff up. So they learn how to write WRITE, or they run around and they say, well, we have rights, RIGHTS, and they will call them writs, WRITS, or writs, RITS, and or rights, RITES. And you can see here how we're spelling, and now we have a spell, and we're using the spelling to spell, right? So all these people, they're running around and they're going, well, we have rights, and we have a piece of paper. It's a wonderful piece of paper. It's called the Constitution. Look at the terms. You're back to things being out of context here. And, it's cons, tie, UI on. So you've been con and tied to a constitution. So we write all these words on a piece of paper, and we call this a constitution, and everybody runs around saying that their rights come from a piece of paper. So here's the question, people. Always the question, okay? You mean to tell me that your rights come from a piece of paper, and because they've been scripted onto a piece of paper by a pile of cons, that a piece of paper gives you your rights? Just like people in the States now, if you have an abortion or you don't want to carry through with your pregnancy, and they find out you have an abortion, they can throw you in life in prison. They can throw you in life. They can throw you in prison for life. And does this sound like you're in control of your own body, right? Do these rights sound right to you, right? So you're back to rights, writs, and I write on this piece of paper that you can't do this, or you can't have an abortion because you were raped, or maybe you can't carry a child to full term, and the child will poison your system, and I forget what this is called. And so you can see, I'm not I'm not pro-abortion or anti-abortion. I'm not anti anything, but when you look at things, like, what if you're a doctor, and if a woman's about to carry a child that is about to she can't carry the child and it starts poisoning her system? What would a normal doctor want to do? A normal doctor got into the practicing of having into being a doctor and stuff, so that he can help save lives. So all of a sudden now you're told, well, your body's not even your own. You're not in charge of your own body. We are, because we wrote on a piece of paper that if you were to have an abortion, even if your 10-year-old was raped and she should not be carrying a baby, her baby being 10 years old, she might not be able to facilitate her body being able to allow to give birth to this child, that now this piece of paper states that you cannot have an abortion. So people saying, well, we have rights. So you're telling me that your rights come from a piece of paper, people? So if I wrote on this piece of paper that you have the right to die, would you agree to this? Right? You can see where I'm going with this. This whole thing is preposterous. So these people going, well, we have a constitution and it gives us rights. So a piece of paper gave you rights. A piece of paper dictates to you what you're allowed to do in life and what you're not allowed to do in life. And this piece of paper runs your life, just like a piece of money. Money, right? If you don't have that piece of paper, it runs your life, okay? You see where I'm going with this, people? So the whole thing is a spell. And, just because I write on a piece of paper that, hey, you must do this, are you going to run around and say, this piece of paper dictates my life, and it tells me what I can do and what I cannot do, and it tells me what I'm allowed to do and can't do? You see how preposterous this thing is, people, right? The universal cosmic waitress, creator, for a lack of a better term, I guess, granted you free will. And this free will is your will to, to do whatever you want, and to not have your life ran and dictated by people who write up these fictitious laws that say you're not allowed to have an abortion. I cannot emphasize this enough. Now, you think the biggest question would be, people in the States would be going, well, why are we not allowed to have abortions? Right? If this is my body, clearly it's not your body. If I write on a piece of paper and say this is now part of the laws that you have to have a baby, right? So is it your body? Obviously not. And people are running around going, it's my body, it's my choice. Well, if you agree to what I write down on a piece of paper to be your laws, well, these are going to be your laws. Now, a big question is, people in the States should be saying, always the question, people, question everything. People should be saying, well, why are people not allowed to have abortions? I'll tell you why, people. Your government is bankrupt. They don't have a pot to piss in, and they borrow money off the banks in order to run their fraud. You lent to some fraud, did you? Their fraud, you lent governments, okay? And you take the G out and you have over men. And add the T and you have mentis, of the mind, right? You're not supposed to be of the mind. No mind. So needless to say, back to the governments, every time a child is born, because who would pay this debt back if there were no future generations to pay this debt back? So every time a child is born, the government borrows money off the banks to facilitate their governmental purposes, right? And this is where all the fraud comes in. So now world governments are so in debt, and the society is encapsulated in this debt, and they're not even aware of why they're involved in all this debt. That should be the first question. Why are all these world governments in debt? Why are they borrowing money off a pile of bankers who are not in debt and running society, right? And you look at the term banking and you have two words, ban and king. So you have the king, and people have been banned from the finances that come from these kings, and that's why they were called peasants, right? Or defendants, right? And who would an ant defend? Right? The queen ant, right? So you can see where I'm going with this. You're not supposed to be a defendant. You're not supposed to defend anybody. You're not supposed to be in a spell. And this whole thing is fraud. And this is why the governments, every time a child is born, they become a future taxpayer. So they need the children in order to borrow the money from these bankers. And why is it that these bankers, if you read the Bank Acts, own everything, but yet you can't own anything? Again, we're back to fraud. So please, people, stop with this nonsense like, well, we have rights. So you're telling me that this piece of paper tells you what you can do and what you're not allowed to do? Do you see how preposterous this is? I'm going to live my life. This piece of paper says, thou shalt not collect rainwater today because I didn't pay taxes to a fictitious government who is corrupt. Look at the terms, core and up, right? They're dealing with banking systems, ban and king systems, right? And you've been banned. So please, people, stop with this nonsense like, well, we have a constitution, right? A constitution. Right? Do you live in Missouri? Do you live in Connecticut? Connect, I cut, right? Do you live in Wetaskiwin? We task, I win, right? Just look at the names. Do you live in Hellas, Spain? Hell as, take the S out of Spain, and you have pain. So do you live in hell as pain? Do you see where I'm going with this, people? Clearly you can see, like, people say, well, your wordplay. These aren't my words, people. All you have to do is words are comprised of sometimes two words, like village. You have vil and age. Or you take the V out and you have ill and age. Age of the ill. So do you want to live in the age of the ill in a vil age, right? Usually a V, if you look at the alphabet, is V is just W is two V's, so will age, right? Then you'll go to work and they will call this management, man, age, and men, and you were not supposed to be managing men. This is the universal's job. This is the universal creator waitress's job, right? That's why thine will be done and not my will, okay, people? So yes, the universe gave us free will and all this stuff. But like this nonsense, like I have free will to do whatever I want. Now, am I going to use this for Rome and join an army and go kill people overseas and work for a pile of Nazis and kill my neighbor because I was told to kill my neighbor? Like, people grow up, right? And they will say, well, we need government. And, people, rights were for slaves, okay? The rights on a piece of paper would tell the slaves what to do, and the slaves would conveniently agree along to this, right? And so back to this, well, we have rights. Well, rights come from a pen. So if I wrote on a piece of paper and I walked up to your house and I said, this piece of paper says that every day of your life from now on, you're going to give me half your paycheck. Because this piece of paper, I wrote on it, and I'm the government, and this piece of paper says that you're going to give me half of all your earnings till the day you're dead, you're in your deathbed, you would probably tell me to go fuck myself, get off my property, and you would probably stand there and greet me with a gun, okay? This is how old farmers used to work. You didn't just simply traverse and walk up to an old farmer's door without knowing these people, because you would get greeted with guns, right? Now, I'm not advocating and promoting guns. Personally, where I come from, I believe in a parable. I'm able to talk at par. I'm par able, right? QRST in the alphabet, right, spells Christ. And then you're back to an alpha and a bet that you people are under a spell. You're in the spell in, and you people are so deceived with this deception that you can't even conjure up the fact that you're in a spell, right? And so the whole thing is preposterous. And You know, like I say, if I told you that this piece of paper gives me the right to take everything you own or to put you to death, give you a death sentence, or put you in jail for the rest of your life and call that a life sentence, a prison sentence, is this the kind of life you want to live, right? You know, you take live and you reverse it and you have evil. You take evil and you reverse it and you have live. And you add a deed and you have the devil and to evil. And people, you can see the use of the words here, and all you have to do is look it up. Now, something I should probably talk about too is like a lot of lawyers. There's a reason why the old joke used to say, what do you call 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the sea? A good start. Why was it called a good start? Because these lawyers have hidden the keys to truth and knowledge. You know, let he who have understanding, right? And so back to the spell, even lawyers, they when they go to school, and if you people don't believe me, you can go check this up. This is not stuff I'm pulling out of my asshole, out of the clear blue thin air, okay? You could literally walk into any university, walk into the law department section of the school section where they sell school books, right? Any university, and you can buy a Black's Law. And if you look up Black's Law, like for example, we had a credit union out west in Alberta called Serve Us, Servus, Serve Us, Serve Us, right? So you're not serving yourself, you're serving them. Now, when you go into that nice little book called Black's Law that you bought at the local library from the University Alberta School Book section, you look up Black's Law and you look up service, and the first two words it'll say a slave, right? You look up a slave in old dictionaries and it'll say a person who is the property of another, and everybody's running around. The first thing a judge will do when you go to court, he'll ask you if you are this person. And the minute you say, yes, I'm this person, you just stated that you are a slave. You look up job in the old dictionaries and it would say public mismanagement of funds for private dishonesty and gain. You would also look up job and say Webster's, stirred up in a web of deceit perhaps, and it would say maybe it was an inside job. So you're all running around going, well, I'm just doing my job. So you're telling me that you're publicly mismanaging money for private dishonesty and gain. So in other words, you're trying to one up your neighbor. You're not trying to. Now you're being selfish. You're trying to sell a fish and make money off this by being selfish. You're selling fish as opposed to giving your neighbor a fish, which is loving. Okay. You take the O out of course and you have curse, and you're all going to school to learn how to spell. You're taking these courses, just take the O out, and then you're learning a lesson, less on. You're not learning more, you're getting less on because they call this programming. People, I could go on for months and days with this stuff. It's not an ounce of my nonsense. And then you read a book called Sun Tzu, and they will talk about how people will pretend to be your friends, and you know they will hoodwink you by pretending that they're your friends, and they'll feed you cocaine and alcohol. They call them spirits. And why would they call them spirits? Now you're digesting these spirits that are corrupting and polluting your soul, and they call them spirits. But yet nobody looks at this stuff, right? People are scared to look at things, you know? Like if somebody came along and said, you know, you're wrong, I would probably look at it, and if I was wrong, I would say, yeah, I'm wrong, then I would admit to it. But we live in a society where people are in a spell and they can't even admit to the fact that they've been hoodwinked. They indoctrinate themselves with these spirits, these spiritus liquors, and they're indoctrinated by all these spirits, and then they run around and do stupid shit. But heaven forbid you tell somebody they're an alcoholic or you know, whatever it is, right? No, but we live in a society where we're always right, nobody's ever wrong, and people, we have to give this up. But simply put, you look at all this stuff, and I can't make this shit up. You don't believe me? Traverse down to your local University of Alberta or whatever university you want of law, by one of their law books, and they're called Black's Law because everything was written on black and it belacks life. They're just words on a paper. So how could a piece of paper dictate what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do? The whole thing is preposterous, and this is where all the fraud starts. I'm doing what I'm told because somebody wrote on a piece of paper with their pen. They wrote some rights, WRITES, or rights, RIGHTS, or RITES, or WRIT, writs, rights, the whole thing, and that your rights come from a piece of paper, and then we run around and say we have a charter of rights, right? Come on, people. The whole thing is fraud. It's fraud on you. It's fraud on the Creator. It's fraud on life. And then at the end of the day, doctors can't even do their jobs and maybe say administer an abortion because some child was raped by some weird-ass pedophile. And now she's forced to carry this child because the government needs to borrow money so that they have a debt slave, a tax slave who is going to grow up to pay taxes and debt, right? You take the T out of tax and you have axes, right? Taxes, axes. You've been axed. You've been hoodwinked, okay, people? So not a word of this nonsense is mine. And like I say, if I walked up to you and said, this piece of paper says that every day of your life you owe me half of everything that you make and you own and stuff like that, you would tell me simply to get the fuck off your property, okay, people? So, and then people say, oh, but we need government. So we need government forcing people into poverty and the indoctrination of programming, and that we need government. People, we don't need government. What we need is God. And you'll notice that they're trying to remove God out of the equation, but unfortunately you can't remove the universal creator, cosmic divine. You can't do this, right? And yes, the Creator gave us free will. The Creator gave people free will, and some people will use that free will to go and murder somebody. And then people will say, well, if there truly was a God, well, God wouldn't allow this. Okay, let me tell you something about life. Life has certain rules and principles that you're not aware of. Okay, and like say if you were to go murder one of God's creations, and you murder a child of God, or you join an army to murder somebody and you kill somebody, that's not on God, that's on you, okay? And the universal creative waitress, do you think like if say they murder a baby in Palestine, yeah, that child might die, as sad as this is, but do you think that the universal cosmic creator does not have this child covered? You see where I'm going with this? Now, would the universal divine cosmic creator have the person who murdered that child, murdered that poor little innocent Palestinian child? Do you think the Creator would have the backing of that person? Obviously not, because they did ill will, okay? And then you're back to management, right? They have to manage people by killing people, or they have to manage people by, for example, it's illegal now because I wrote on a piece of paper that you cannot have an abortion even if you were a child who got raped. And again, I'm not pro or anti anything. I'm not anti-government. I'm all for good things, but fraud is fraud. And at the end of the day, the whole thing is just preposterous and cat shit crazy. So there are laws, and people have forgot that there's God's laws, which you have the law of attraction, you have the gift of free will, you have the law of repentance. These are all God's laws, not man's laws, right? Man's laws will have you believing that you live in the bottom of Australia and you literally stand upside down, planes and boats fly upside down, but yet with this magical thing called gravity, everything gets reversed and flipped upright, and they will have you believe in this. And you take the V and the E out of believe, and you have belie. So you are belying in something that you have no actual factual proof of, right? Just like these independent fact checkers. They're independent, so they're dependent on the fact that they get paid paychecks in order to espouse lies. And for example, these people stand upside, so they'll say, well, that's not true. We live on a globe, and because the globe spins and everything's magically upside right because of this magical thing they call gravity. I'm sorry, where I come from, it's called mass. And if I drop this piece of paper is lighter than the air, and it's called mass, right? And then you have these masses, you take the M out of masses, and you have a pile of asses who believe that they're truly upside down, But yet, because of this thing that we call programming and deception and deceit, that they are magically standing upside right even though they're upside down. We can fly rovers to missions on Mars and Uranus up your ass and the whole 9 yards, but yet everybody's magically standing upside down. But yet they're magically upside right. Do you see where I'm going with this, people? And I'm not a flat earther. Have I been around the globe or to each corner of the earth? Obviously, I haven't. So when you have these fact checkers come along and say, well, that's completely wrong, I know because I'm a fact checker, right? So you checked a pile of words on a piece of paper that told you that the earth is round, and you now magically believe that the earth is round, and everybody who's standing upside down is magically upright. When I was a kid, I watched Bugs Bunny, and he tunneled down, and he tunneled through his little rabbit hole, and he came right through China, and all of a sudden they spun him upside right. Does this make any sense to you people, right? Even in the old Bible, I mean, it's a go spell. You're back to a spell, and people can't decide and decipher what's a spell and what's not a spell. And even in the Old Testament, man, they talk about how God sheweth his handiwork with the firmament, right? That means that you're living under a dome, for God's sakes, Now, are there a lot of things I can explain or not explain? Yes and no, but you look at the term and explain. We live in a world where everybody's having an explanation. They are explaining themselves, and you are never supposed to explain yourself with anything. Like, you take words on a piece of paper and you take the D and S out and you have war. And everybody is at a war with words, right? And that's why now the pen is mightier than the sword, right? And you take the S out of sword and you have word. You take the D and S out of word and you have war. And they call it working, right? You go to work to take the king out and you have war. You're at war with the king. You're back to a banking, where they're the kings and you have been banned. And we live in a world we live in a world of abundance, but we say, no, this piece of paper says that you can no longer live in abundance because you need money. You need fictitious pieces of paper. Magi nation. You're back to nation and magi. And if you look up magi, you look at spellcasters, necromancers, evil, all out evil, truth foretellers and all this stuff. These are all spells, people, and I suggest that you please come out of the spell, please come out of Babylon. And you look at the terms Babylon, babble, and everybody's running around and they're going, well, I'm right and you're wrong. And they don't even understand that, they're in a spell, and that words, you take the D and S out and it spells war, just WOR instead of WAR, right? You're going forward. Take the D out, you're going forward, you're going backwards, you're going back war, right? Take the D and the S out, right? Everything is a war. It's like a war rant. War and rant. You have two words, rant for war. And people and then they're running around going, but I have rights. I have rights because this little piece of paper says I do. You see how preposterous this is, people? Birds and bees aren't that stupid because they have never allowed themselves to been programmed to have the divine intelligence that the universal cosmic creator waitress has given them to say, well, now we're going to pay taxes. You follow me, people? And it would be different if people paid taxes and this money was used lovingly to help everybody in that. But why are world governments in debt? That should be your first question. Everything should be a question, Like I say, they'll have you believing that down is up and up is down, and you live upside down, and boats and planes are upside down, but yet the world's spinning, and everything's just magically upright, okay, people? So if you take the D out of devil and you just have all out evil, so you have a choice. You can live, or you can be part of the spell, which is evil, right? Just reverse the supposition. Live, evil, live, right? So anyhow, once again, I'm babbling. They even have, you see these TV commercials now, they have a program where if you want to learn a different language, gauge on the land, and they call it Babel, right? And you were told not to, you were told to come out of Babylon, my people, unless ye want to partake in her sins. And then people run around going, well, I have rights. And if you look up a copy of Black's Law, and any one of you, go, I suggest you can grab a PDF online through a torrent site, whatever you want, and you look up Black's Law, and it's slavery, 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 slave, 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 debt, debt, debt. And this is the society we live in. And, people, these aren't my words. So please, I don't want to hear, oh, you're word playing, you're wordsmithing. These are not my words, and I am not a wordsmith, right? You're back to the pen is mightier than the sword, because people realize that now they don't have to kill you with the sword. They can just write down laws on a constitution or a charter of rights and say, you have the right not to do this, or else we'll come along and, you don't know your sentence structure, so we'll give you a death sentence, or we'll give you a life sentence in jail, right? You take the J out of jail and you have ail, right? Might be an ailment, right? You take the P out of pill and you have ill, right? You take the V out of village and you have ill and age of the ill, right? What's a W? It's two V's, will age, right? They call this management, man, age, and men, and you will age. You will age drastically, right? The universe has given us abundance. And God was giving out brains and trains, and we said no thanks to the universe, to God. We'll catch the next one, right? God was giving out brains, and we thought He said trains, so we said no thanks. We'll take the next one. You see where I'm going with this, people? So please come out of the spell, come out of Babylon. I'm gonna leave it at that. I could go on with this shit for days, months. Even say. You get mail dropped off to you. You take the M out of mail and you have ale. And then you have a mailman, right? Ale man, right? And it's, the whole thing, man. Anyhow, I'm babbling, so I'm going to leave it at that. Once again, I send everybody much peace, love, respect. I don't care who you are. Whether you're evil or you're good, whatever, that has no bearing on what I do. But basically, people, stop saying that we have rights and that they come from a piece of paper, which is a charter of rights or a constitution in the United States. You have grace, and grace never asked you to say that you live your life based on what pieces of paper say. You can't even follow the law. Go to your local library. Try to follow the law. Who the hell knows the law? You don't even know what you're allowed to do. We even live in a society where people are scared to talk about anything anymore because they're that scared of disappearing by the powers that be. Clearly, if there was an ounce of good policemen in the force, they would be arresting criminals like, say, Trump and Trudeau and all these people. But, they say, well, there's still good police out there. Well, if there were, but you know what, people? These people work for money, and that makes them whores. They're like independent fact checkers. They'll say, well, the world's not flat. How would they know? Have they ever been around the world? Have they ever been to the four corners of the earth? But yet they'll come out because they get paid to say this. And a lot of these independent fact checkers, they're not doctors, they're not lab technicians. They don't contribute anything at all to life other than to increase Satan's lie, right? Which is, don't do this because, well, we fact check that, right? So again, watch out for these fact checkers, right? Watch out for all this bullshit, because simply put, these people will have you believing that up is down and down is up and sideways is that ways, and people, so please come out of the spell, come out of Babylon, and I send everybody much peace, love, respect always. And well, till then, keep your heads up and your sticks on the ice. Cheers. Peace.